You know, I went to school with this guy named Richard. He was a straight-up cornball, but I was one of the few that was nice to him. He didn't really have friends, no girls talked to him, and he always came to school functions like dances alone. I invited him to parties, outings, and all because he was a cool dude to me. I just thought people never gave him a chance. We graduated in 2006. He disappeared off the face of the earth. About 6 years ago, I ended up getting a truck driving job, and he was the owner of the company. I didn't know this at the time, although I knew the last name seemed familiar. Went through the interview and everything. Got the job. On my first day, the supervisor walks up to me and says, "Hey, Mr. Howard wants to see you." I'm like, okay. Mind you, this is my first day, so I had to ask where his office was. I walked in, and he goes, "Man, I knew that was you. You're the only Trey I know. How you been, bro? Man, I missed you. It's crazy you're working for me now, huh? Man, I remember how you had my back and looked out for me and everything. I'm going to take care of you." I'm like, shit. Bet. First month there, I got a $7 raise, and I was already making dope-ass money. I got 2 promotions within 6 months. And I was like, shit yeah, don't get me wrong, I did my job to the T. Ended up coming off the road and having my own office in the building, supervisor over all the other drivers with another raise. One day, I walked into the break room, and this chick, Jessica, was crying. I asked her if she was okay. She said, "Yeah, I'm fine." I'm like, "What's wrong?" She got all stiff and worried because technically I was the third in charge over the building, so she was like, "I'm fine. Don't worry about it." I'm like, "You sure?" She said, "Yes, Mr. Burns, I'm fine. Thanks for checking on me." So I was like, well, okay. I'm such a stand-up dude. I'm young as hell with all this power. I didn't think to follow up. I'm thinking about what I'm drinking when I get off. So I brush it off and continue my day. Jessica. I walked into the warehouse after pretty much everybody else was gone except me, another guy, and Rich, who was the owner of the company. And I overheard Rich say, "Yeah, I had to tell that bitch Jessica to stay in her place." The other guy, who I don't care enough about to make up a name for, replied, "What happened, bruh?" Rich replied, "She got in her feelings, man. Sex is sex. I have a family." She knew this before she came to me. The other guy just laughs as if it was the funniest shit on earth. I stood there in silence for a second. Really was kind of waiting to see if they said anything else, but I had already heard enough. I walked in quickly as if I wasn't already there, speaking to both individuals. They were semi-startled, but they just assumed I didn't hear anything as I walked in very casual and normal, as I always do. Rich said, "Hey, Trey, what are you doing after work tonight, bruh?" "I was thinking about hitting happy hour with this fool here. You down?" I almost said yes. But I quickly remembered what I had just heard and felt kind of weird about the whole chilling thing for some reason. It's like, even though she said it's nothing. And I heard him say they were only fucking. I know there's more to it. And if I hadn't walked in so soon and just stood there, I probably would have heard the rest. But yeah, I declined. I made up some shit about my lady and told him if I missed it, she'd be pissed. So he was cool bro, next time. I was like, bet. So after I finished my paperwork and clocked out, I got into my Ford Expedition, fully loaded. I loved that SUV. It was the rawest and nicest vehicle I ever drove. I remember like yesterday when I went to the car lot, I had my eyes set on something mediocre, but when I told them how much I had to put down, they took me to a whole different side of the car lot. But I'll stop there. Because I'm not here to talk about that. Even though I did feel like the dopest MF on the planet. When I got into my vehicle, I picked up my phone and called Jessica. After about 5 rings, she answered and said, "Hey, Mr. Burns, what can I do for you?" I told her, "Nothing, but tell me the truth. Today in the break room, You were messed up, and I followed with, excuse my language. Tell me what's going on. I know something isn't right. She replied, it's fine, Mr. Burns. I did this to myself, and I'll figure it out myself as well. I paused for a minute and then I spoke. Does this have anything to do with work? Or is it totally personal? She replied, both. Then I replied, is there anything I could do to help? She said, no. Then after a short pause, she said, you couldn't help because it'll be a conflict of interest. I was very bothered by that statement, but I didn't push any further. I said, well, if you need me, just reach me. The very next morning, I called an all-hands-on-deck meeting. And once everyone got into the meeting room, I pulled out a work article I found on Google the previous night, acting as if I wrote it myself, stating sexual harassment would not be tolerated in the workplace. I also read off a few news articles I found online of actual cases just to reassure the employees things like this can happen. At the end, I had every employee, including Richard, sign a voucher indicating they understood the rules and possible consequences if such an offense was done. Let me stop here. Yeah, I know how it sounds. Friend from high school I protected remembers me. Brings me in. Makes my life a lot easier. I should just appreciate it, right? Yeah, I've thought about it numerous times. But this situation bothered me so much because I had a cousin involved in this same type of situation. Feelings got too deep, and she exposed herself. Damn near. Lost her mind. She lost her job and her stability. It caused a lot of conflict within my family. Like, why didn't we stop it? My mom took it the hardest because it was her sister's child, and she felt as if she could have done something. So yes, it was a lot more personal to me. At the end of the meeting, I felt as if I did something, even if it was temporary. I was just trying to figure out how to approach the situation. I knew my relationship with Rich would eventually be affected, but I didn't care. A few weeks later, I got called into the office. My boss, Rich, was sitting there, looking pissed. We need to talk, he said. I nodded, trying to keep a neutral expression on my face. I heard from a few people that you've been asking questions about me and Jessica, he continued. Is that true? I paused for a moment before answering, yes, it is true. I was concerned about her well-being, and I wanted to make sure everything was okay. Rich's face turned red, and he stood up abruptly. This is none of your business, Trey. You should have come to me if you had concerns. I stayed calm and replied, I understand that, but given the circumstances, I thought it was necessary to address it with her first. He seemed to calm down a bit and sat back down. Look, I appreciate your concern, but I can assure you that everything is fine. Jessica and I have sorted things out. I nodded, not entirely convinced, but not wanting to push the issue further. All right, I said. If you say everything is fine, I'll take your word for it. We both knew that wasn't entirely true, but I had made my point. I stood up and left the office, feeling a mix of relief and disappointment. I knew I had done the right thing by addressing the issue, but I couldn't help but feel that it wasn't entirely resolved. Time would tell, I guess.